I grew up in Philadelphia, Mississippi, worked in a family business.
My dad grew up with one brother, mom and dad. They owned a tractor supply shop called Saxon Supply, and he spent a lot of his young life working there and learning that trade.
Went to Mississippi State College, met my wife Debbie there. We were married. We lived in Philadelphia 6 or 7 years, then we moved to Jackson.
Mark and I have been married for 41 years. We have John, who lives in Kansas City. He's a cardiologist. His wife's a pediatric hospitalist. They have 2 precious children, George, who's 4, and Ivy, who's 2.5.
He's very kind, capable, thoughtful person, very intelligent. I think what he's probably most well known for is that he can fix anything.
I had a younger brother who died suddenly at age 44 from hypertension.
It was terrifying for everybody. He had a young child. It was heartbreaking. So
I was certainly aware of that family history, and I was under treatment for that. It was well-controlled hypertension.
For months, every time I saw Mark watching TV, maybe falling asleep, I would stop and watch him breathe to make sure he was okay. I would wake up at night and stop and watch him breathe to make sure he's okay. It's a terrifying thing when something happens to somebody so young.
It was a typical Monday morning. I was here in my office doing my normal routine. The only thing that was unusual was the coffee just didn't taste very good, and I started feeling heartburn, and I went down to the break room to get a cup of ice water and sat there for a few minutes, and it didn't improve. And so I asked a colleague to bring me some antacid tablets, and it didn't get any better. And then after a few minutes, I started getting a little clammy and perspiring. So I called my son, who was a cardiology in training at UMC.
And I was actually in clinic and got a call from Dad, and I immediately picked up, and he said, I'm having, this new onset, I'm having some chest pain, and I'm a little short of breath, and I'm sweating, and everybody here wants to know whether I should take an aspirin or not. So I said, yes, that'd be a good idea, and why don't you head on over and I'll meet you at the hospital.
So he called and he said, Mom, have you talked to Dad? He said, well, I think he's having a heart attack. You might want to come over to the emergency room. And I lost my mind and said, what?
So I actually took him back to another room and said, all right, we're going to do an EKG, and started putting on all the leads. And it was pretty clear as I was putting each lead on that it was not going to be normal.
John turned and tore the paper off and looked at it. He turned and looked at me, and he turned gray. And when he turned gray, I thought, well, this is it.
So I took the EKG and found Dr. Ashley.
I saw John standing in the control room. I thought, well, he's got somebody he wants me to see. And so I kind of walked away from the table and walked towards him in the control room. And so he takes an EKG and he just holds it up in the air and lets me look at it because I'm scrubbed in. It was an obvious heart attack. And I said, where's the patient? And he's like, it's my dad. And I was like, at that point you kind of get this feeling of like, oh my gosh, I know what this feels like for him.
I think the thing that surprised me the most, or I wasn't anticipating, was how much I lost my composure. I just couldn't answer questions. I was just, at that point I was truly a family member and no longer a physician.
So it was basically a widowmaker because he had a blockage in the left anterior descending, which most people refer to as the widowmaker. I went over to the emergency room and we sort of got the medicines going that we needed to have, and we got the cath lab ready to bring him over. And so he was in a good bit of pain at that point.
So they went in, put a stent in my heart, reestablished blood flow. Within an hour, I felt like nothing had ever happened. And so I was very fortunate that I got in as quickly as I did, and thanks to Dr. Ashley and the team at UMMC.
Thankfully, she was able to save his life.
The easy part was once I knew that he was going back to the cath lab, I had no doubt that they were going to do a great job because I'd seen it in action many times.
I didn't feel like I was going to die. I was more worried about, what did I leave undone? What did I not get done that I wanted to do?
If Mark had not made it that day, he would have missed so much. He would have missed John getting married. He would have missed his grandchildren, which would have been the biggest blow to him, I think, of anything. He loves those grandchildren.
The kids really adore them. They go by Nona and Pop. So that's, I couldn't even imagine if Pop wasn't around for those two.
That's one of the many things for which I'm profoundly grateful. What I would say that you could learn from my experience is that, first of all, you need to know your numbers. First, everyone needs to know their numbers. Second, when you do experience symptoms for which you're unfamiliar, then you need to take it seriously and get your care as quickly as you can.
I think research is important because the treatment we have now with Mark is so much better than what my dad went through 30 years ago, where he had to have open heart surgery.
The technology, the education that comes out of research produced some of the advances in cardiac care that enabled me to have a full and productive life now. I'm very grateful for the good work that they did on me, and that's why I'm a big supporter of the American Heart Association.